Since the earliest moments of human existence, we have been drawn to the unknown. The horizon was never just a line in the distance. It was a question. What lies beyond it? The wind that brushed across the plains carried the scent of lands unseen. The waves that broke on the shore whispered of distant islands and worlds waiting to be found. Curiosity was the spark that separated us from all other creatures. It pushed us to wonder, to observe, to map, and to remember. Long before there were maps or compasses, long before the world had borders or names, ancient people lifted their eyes to the sky and began to understand direction. The sun became their guide by day, and the stars their silent pathfinders at night. They read the movement of birds, the rhythm of the tides, and the shadow of mountains. Every detail of nature was a clue, a silent message written across the face of the earth. To explore meant to survive. For early humans, discovery was not a choice. It was a necessity. The search for new lands brought food, water, and safety. But it also awakened something deeper, a hunger for knowledge. Over centuries, this hunger grew stronger. Villages became cities. Roads became empires. And with every step, the shape of the known world began to change. Civilizations rose along the fertile rivers of Mesopotamia, Egypt, and the Indus Valley. These people learned to read the language of geography. They followed the flow of water, the direction of wind, and the fertility of soil. Geography was not just the background of human life. It was the stage, the script, and the invisible force guiding history itself. As centuries passed, brave minds began to question the structure of the world. Was the earth flat or round? What lay beyond the farthest ocean? Were there lands untouched by any human foot? The search for answers gave birth to science, to exploration, and to the very idea of discovery. And with every new horizon reached, the earth revealed another piece of its mystery. From the deserts of Africa to the icy ends of the poles, from deep forests to towering mountains, humanity's story has always been written in geography. It is a story of courage, of endless curiosity, and of the eternal dance between man and the planet that created him. This is where our journey begins. The story of 10 great discoveries that changed everything we know about the world. The story of how the Earth revealed its secrets, and how, in discovering the planet, humanity discovered itself. The ancient world, Eratosthenes, and the birth of geography. Long before satellites, long before explorers set sail across unknown oceans, one man dared to measure the world using nothing but reason, sunlight, and shadows. His name was Eratosthenes. 2,000 years before anyone could see the Earth from space, he looked at the world and imagined it as a sphere. In an age when most believed the Earth was flat, his mind reached for the stars. Eratosthenes lived in the 3rd century before Christ, in the great city of Alexandria, Egypt, the intellectual heart of the ancient world. Inside its legendary library, where countless scrolls held the wisdom of civilizations, Eratosthenes worked as a scholar, mathematician, and geographer. He was fascinated by one question. How big is our planet? He noticed something curious. At noon in the city of Sine, the sun shone directly overhead during the summer solstice, casting no shadow. Yet at the very same moment in Alexandria, a tall column cast a small but measurable shadow. From this simple observation, he saw the key to unlocking the size of the Earth itself. Using the difference in shadow angles between the two cities and knowing the distance separating them, Eratosthenes made a calculation. With only a stick, sunlight, and pure logic, he measured the circumference of the Earth with astonishing accuracy, just a few hundred kilometers away from the value we know today. His discovery was more than mathematics. It was a revelation. It proved that human reason could grasp the scale of the planet without seeing it. It showed that the Earth was not endless, not flat, but a single sphere, vast and connected. Eratosthenes gave geography its true beginning, the science of describing the Earth, of transforming curiosity into knowledge. In that moment, the world became measurable, the invisible became visible, and humanity took its first great step toward understanding the shape of its own home. From a simple shadow was born an entire science, one that would guide explorers, mapmakers, and dreamers for thousands of years to come. The Silk Road, mapping the invisible threads of civilization. As the ancient world grew, something remarkable began to happen. From China to the Mediterranean, distant civilizations that had never met began to connect. Not through conquest, but through exchange. Through the movement of goods, stories, and ideas. This vast network would later be known as the Silk Roads. And though it had no borders or single map, it became one of the most important geographical discoveries in human history. The Silk Roads were not a single path, but a web of trade routes stretching over 6,000 kilometers. Across deserts, mountains, and endless plains, caravans carried silk, spices, gold, and glass. But more valuable than any treasure was knowledge. The route linked the East and the West in ways the world had never seen before. With every traveler, a piece of culture, religion, and invention crossed into new lands. In China, the Han dynasty sent envoys westward in search of horses and alliances. In the Middle East, merchants offered glassware, textiles, and precious metals. In the Roman Empire, nobles wrapped themselves in silk without knowing where it came from. Geography had quietly become the bridge between worlds. The Silk Road shaped cities like Samarkand, Kasha, and Baghdad into centers of art and science. They became crossroads of languages, philosophies, and discoveries. Paper, gunpowder, and the compass traveled these routes, changing the course of civilization forever. Even the Black Death, centuries later, would follow the same path, a dark reminder of how deeply the world had become connected. Yet beyond trade and power, the Silk Roads revealed something far greater. They showed that geography was not only about distance or direction. It was about connection. The Earth, once seen as divided and vast, now appeared woven together by invisible threads of human movement. Through these ancient roads, humanity learned that every mountain and desert separating us could also unite us. And as travelers continued to map their paths across continents, the Silk Roads became more than geography. They became the living arteries of civilization itself. The age of exploration, when the world doubled in size. For thousands of years, humanity believed the known world was all there was. Europe, Asia, and parts of Africa formed the edges of the map. Beyond them lay the great unknown, seas that some believed would drop into nothing, monsters that devoured ships, and lands that existed only in myth. But in the 15th century, everything changed. The age of exploration began, and the boundaries of the world would never be the same again. It started with courage. With men who dared to follow the wind into places no one had ever seen. The Portuguese sailors were among the first. Guided by stars and driven by ambition, they sailed down the west coast of Africa, opening routes around the continent and into the Indian Ocean. Bartholomew Diaz reached the Cape of Good Hope. Vasco da Gama sailed all the way to India, proving that the oceans were pathways, not barriers. Soon after, a man named Christopher Columbus set sail from Spain, believing he could reach Asia by crossing the Atlantic. He never found Asia, but what he discovered instead would transform the world. The Americas, vast, rich, and completely unknown to the people of Europe, entered history's map for the first time. In the decades that followed, explorers like Ferdinand Magellan pushed the limits even further. His expedition became the first to circle the globe, a journey that proved the Earth was not just round, but connected by endless oceans. Every map before him was now obsolete. The known world had doubled in size. But exploration came with a heavy cost. The meeting of continents brought not only trade and discovery, but also conquest, disease, and the loss of entire civilizations. Gold and glory drove many, but curiosity drove others, men who charted stars, currents, and coastlines, giving humanity a new understanding of the planet it called home. The age of exploration was not just a chapter of discovery. It was the moment humanity stepped beyond fear, crossed the edge of myth, and found that the Earth was far larger, more complex, and more beautiful than anyone had ever imagined. It was the age when the world finally opened its eyes and saw itself for the first time. The discovery of the New World, a collision of worlds. When European sails first appeared on the horizon of the Americas, it was not just a moment of discovery. It was a moment of collision. Two worlds that had evolved separately for thousands of years suddenly came face to face. The Old World and the New. Europe and the Americas. Each rich in culture, language, and belief, and neither prepared for what would follow. The year was 1492. When Christopher Columbus landed on the shores of the Caribbean, he believed he had reached the edges of Asia. Instead, he had stepped onto a continent unknown to his world, yet home to millions of people who had built vast civilizations: the Aztecs, the Maya, the Inca. These were societies with cities, temples, and knowledge of the stars long before any European ship had set sail. What followed changed history forever. The arrival of Europeans brought new animals, plants, and technologies across the ocean. Horses, wheat, and metal tools transformed life in the Americas. In return, Europe gained corn, potatoes, tomatoes, and countless other crops that would reshape diets and economies across continents. This exchange, later known as the Columbian Exchange, would connect ecosystems and people in ways the world had never seen. But this meeting was not one of equals. Alongside trade came conquest, disease, and suffering. Millions of native lives were lost to smallpox, war, and enslavement. The balance of entire continents shifted. Empires rose, others fell, and the global map was redrawn forever. Yet even through the darkness, something irreversible had begun: the unification of the world. Oceans no longer divided humanity. For the first time, every continent was part of one interconnected story. Geography was no longer local. It had become global. The discovery of the New World marked the birth of the modern era, an age of exploration, exchange, and expansion. It was both a triumph of human curiosity and a tragedy of human ambition. And from that moment on, the world would never again be the same. Mapping the unknown, the polar expeditions. As the great continents were explored and mapped, there remained two blank spaces on the edges of every map. The frozen ends of the Earth. The North Pole and the South Pole. Vast, silent, and unforgiving, they stood as the last frontiers, places where even the bravest explorers hesitated to go. Yet for those who sought to know the true shape of the planet, these icy realms became the final test of human courage. In the 19th and early 20th centuries, nations began to race toward the poles. For them, the frozen world was more than a mystery. It was a symbol. To reach it meant to conquer the unknown. Ships were built to crush through ice, and men marched across endless white horizons with nothing but compasses, dogs, and determination. The Arctic came first. Explorers like Fridtjof Nansen, Robert Peay, and Frederick Cook each claimed to have reached the top of the world. Their journeys were marked by frostbite, starvation, and silence, a silence so deep it seemed to swallow time itself. Some never returned. Others came back as legends. Whether or not they truly stood on the pole mattered less than the spirit that drove them there. Then came the South. Antarctica, colder, harsher, and more isolated than anywhere on Earth. British explorer Robert Falcon Scott and Norwegian Roald Amundsen both set out to reach the pole, knowing that only one would succeed. In 1911, Amundsen arrived first, planting the Norwegian flag on the heart of the frozen continent. Scott and his men reached the same spot weeks later, only to perish on their return. Their courage became immortal. The polar expeditions were not driven by gold or empire, but by something deeper: the need to complete the map of our world. They revealed the true scale of the planet and the extremes of nature's power. In the vast white emptiness, explorers discovered the limits of human endurance and the endless reach of human curiosity. When the last blank spaces were finally filled, the Earth stood complete in the eyes of humankind. But even then, one truth remained. Discovery was never really about the places we reached. It was about the spirit that pushed us to go further, to face the unknown and to understand the world in its entirety. The space age, a new frontier of geography. For centuries, explorers had crossed deserts, climbed mountains, and sailed across every ocean. The map of Earth was finally complete. Yet, as humanity looked down at its own planet, a new question began to rise. What lies beyond our world? The age of exploration was not over. It was about to leave the Earth behind. In the middle of the 20th century, the race for space began. What started as a contest between nations soon became a new chapter in the story of discovery. In 1957, the Soviet Union launched Sputnik, the first artificial satellite to orbit Earth. For the first time, humanity looked at its planet from the outside. From that tiny metal sphere, geography took on an entirely new meaning. Just a few years later, Yuri Gagarin became the first human to travel into space. His words, spoken as he gazed upon the blue curve of Earth, changed everything. He said the Earth was beautiful, fragile, united. From orbit, there were no borders, no nations, only one world. Geography had expanded beyond land and sea. It had entered the cosmos. Then came the Apollo missions. When Neil Armstrong stepped onto the surface of the Moon in 1969, the entire planet watched together. For the first time in history, the world saw itself as a single home, small, bright, and alone in the darkness of space. The famous photograph known as Earthrise captured more than an image. It captured perspective. Space exploration turned geography from a local science into a planetary one. Satellites began to map oceans, forests, and deserts with precision beyond imagination. Weather forecasting, navigation, and global communication became possible because we had learned to look at our planet from above. The space age was not only a triumph of technology. It was a transformation of vision. It reminded humanity that exploration never ends. That our maps are not just of continents and seas, but of an entire universe waiting to be understood. The world that once seemed infinite had finally revealed its true size, and the sky had become the next frontier. The modern era, redefining discovery in the digital age. The journey of exploration did not end with the stars. It evolved. Today, discovery no longer requires a ship, a compass, or a telescope. It begins with a signal, a satellite, a single line of code. The explorers of our age do not cross oceans. They navigate data. They map not just land, but information. In the 21st century, humanity has gained the power to see the entire planet in real time. Satellites circle the Earth, scanning mountains, cities, and forests with incredible precision. GPS allows anyone, anywhere, to find their place on the globe. A farmer in Africa, a scientist in Antarctica, and a traveler in Tokyo all share the same invisible network that keeps the world connected. Artificial intelligence now reads the patterns of the Earth, tracking climate change, mapping coral reefs, predicting storms, and even discovering ancient cities buried beneath sand and jungle. Geography has become digital. The map is alive, changing every second, shaped by the pulse of humanity itself. And yet, the spirit of exploration remains the same. The same curiosity that guided Eratosthenes, the same courage that led explorers across the oceans, and the same wonder that lifted humans into space now drives us to understand our planet in new ways. The tools have changed, but the question is eternal. What is out there, and what will we discover next? The story of discovery is not over. It is only beginning again, in a new form. The map of the world will never be finished, because discovery is not about the edges of the Earth. It is about the endless frontier of the human mind. If you enjoyed this journey through the greatest discoveries that shaped our world, subscribe to my channel and share your thoughts in the comments. Tell me what part of this story inspired you the most. And stay with us, because the next discovery is already waiting, just beyond the horizon.